Hey Bookaholics, so welcome back to another video. Today I am bringing you my March wrap-up. In the month of March, I managed to read so many books, like so many. And I have no idea really how I did it. It was also quite a busy month work-wise for me. So it wasn't even like, oh, I had all this free time. I don't know. But I just really felt like I had my reading mojo down this month. So yeah, let's talk about the books. Just to get the mildly annoying part over for you guys is that I have read 3 books that I am reading for various different vlog projects that are not out yet, and therefore I'm not going to talk about these books, but I am going to just say that I've read them. Momentarily annoying part, I have read Green Teeth by Molly O'Neill. This is a book that I am buddy reading with some friends, and we are hopefully going to have some content ready for you sometime relatively soon. You will have full spoilery thoughts coming your way. Another one where again I have full spoilery thoughts, many thoughts on, and that is Terraformers by Anna Lee Newitz. I had quite a few thoughts on this one, and I have a vlog, as I said, coming your way soon. I am hopefully going to be able to talk a little bit more about this one with you all at that point, but I haven't actually talked about the project yet, so you'll have to wait. And then a similar situation again with The City in the Middle of the Night by Charlie Jane Anders. This is another one that I actually hadn't planned a project for. This was going to be part of my trans readathon vlog, but then when I started reading it I realized that I really needed to talk so much more about it, and that vlog was already running really long, so I thought I'm going to separately vlog this one and at some point hopefully squeeze it in. So I've got 3 that I can't talk to you about, but they are over and done with now. I have 2 that I rolled over from last month where I was doing a vlog where I read sort of the series that I am reading along, and 2 of them bled slightly into the very beginning of March, and that is The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in Mistborn Era 2, and it is also part of his Cosmere, and I actually had a good time with this. I ended up giving it like a solid 3.5 stars. It was a good time. This one is a Western setting, so we have flintlock fantasy, which I am not very accustomed to, but we also, you know, we have trains going on in here, and it was very Western in vibe, and I really did enjoy that. This is set hundreds of years after the events of Mistborn Era 1, where those events have now passed into history. Now, as someone who didn't really enjoy Mistborn Era 1 all that much, I went in very trepidatious with this one because the only other Western fantasy that I believe I have read, The Dark Tower, which I didn't love either. So between Mistborn and also my disinterest in Westerns, I was hesitant. But I had a really good time with it. I actually enjoyed it a lot more than I expected to. It's got very buddy cop vibes to it as well, and I'm really hoping that I can get to the rest soon because I am actually enjoying my time with the Cosmere for once. The other one that I did read for that vlog was I read Dead House Gates by Stephen Erickson. Listen, I've listened to this before, but the impact that this had, having read it with my eyeballs and actually fully understanding the scope of the story, I absolutely love this. I am so glad that I am rereading these. I did read the first ones via audio. It really wasn't grabbing me the way that I knew it should be, so I decided to pick them up again physically, and I have no regrets because this series is so much better read with my eyeballs, where I'm actually retaining the information. I can't tell you a huge amount about this one. Malazan is this massive epic fantasy series, and this is book 2, but I do have my thoughts in the vlog if you want more thoughts. But this was a 5-star read for me. I absolutely adored everything that we witnessed in here, and the ending, as I said, absolutely cataclysmic, and I am really excited to continue on through this series. The next thing I'll chat to you about is that I did read some books that I have been sent for review, arcs or review copies that have been sent by authors. I did a vlog dedicated to that. That was lots of fun, and I ended up reading The Mist of Memory by N.C. Scrimgeour, which is the second book in the Sea of Souls saga. I loved this book. This is a 5-star read for me. Absolutely fantastic. Even bigger step up from book 1, and book 1 was absolutely amazing. I'm so invested in this series. I can't wait to see where the last book goes. If you like nautical fantasy, I would highly recommend checking it out. It's got Selkies and Kelpies, and it's got anti-colonial themes. It's got fantastic and easy to root for characters, and I just had a great time with this sequel. Another sequel that I also gave 5 stars and absolutely loved, I would highly recommend you check out, is The Tomb of Marillion by J.R. Snyder. This one is the first full-length novel set in the Sin Eater series. series. There's a collection of short stories. There's a novelette and a novella that precede this. And this is where we really do start to get into the larger expanse of the world and the series. And I am so excited to just keep reading through this series. It's one of my favorite ongoing series at the moment, and it doesn't get enough love. It's cozy fantasy, but at the same time, it's got more stakes than you'd usually get in cozy fantasy. You've just got really wholesome people more than anything. I absolutely adore reading this series because it really does tackle its themes. It's kind of like if you had The Witcher but made it cozier and more murder mystery-esque, I suppose. Overall, I just love it, and I would highly recommend anyone check it out. And the last one of the review books that I read was Cello's Gate by Maurice Affinch. I can't remember the surname. It's here. And this one I liked. I had a good time with it. It was a lot of fun. It was a fun time, not a long time. I don't think it's going to be a new favorite anytime soon. It's not like, oh my God, I can't wait to read the sequel. But I had a fun time with it. And you know what? Sometimes you really need a fun time. And in a month where I've read Sanderson and I've read Malazan and I've been reading all of these dense epic sci-fis, I really did just need a win. And this was a fun time for that. I don't think that it's necessarily going to be one that I'm going to think about very much outside of just, oh, I read it and that was fun, but that's okay, you know? So that's where I'm at. I did also read my jar pick for the month, which was to read Perilous Times by Thomas D. Lee. This was a environmental fantasy that is an Arthurian retelling, and I had a good time with it. I have read so many people talk about how, you know, it's quite preachy, and it is. You know, it's an environmental fantasy. It's kind of its job to be preachy. I enjoyed it nonetheless. I found the humor that actually landed, and I'm normally very picky with humor. I really liked the way that it played with Arthurian legend and Arthurian characters. I like the cyclical nature of these characters being revived and the conversations around environmentalism. I thought they were all really good. But it's not only environmentalism. There's loads of crackdowns on the likes of overconsumption, capitalism, and the extreme state that the world is heading in. It's a dystopian. I would recommend. There was nothing wrong with this book at all that I could think of. Maybe it didn't engage with me on an emotional level when it comes to the characters, which is the reason I got 4 stars instead of 5, but I see no huge flaws. So it got a weird amount of criticism for a book that I thought was really well crafted. The next vlog project that I had was my spinner wheel vlog, and the spinner wheel this month's job was to give me some Jane Austen retellings, some Pride and Prejudice retellings. The one that I did pick for myself as opposed to choosing out the spinner wheel because it's the only one I own physically, and I did want to be reading a physical book during that time just in case the migraines hit or in case I wanted to read something physical, and that was Pride and Prejudice in Space by Alexis Lampley. Alexis Lampley is the artist over at the Nerdy Ink, and this book has full illustrations and mixed media throughout. I really enjoyed this because it is exactly the same story. It is just modified text, so it's not a rewritten book, it's not a retelling, it's a reimagining where it takes the original text as is and then just makes mild alterations to it to change, in this case, the setting. This is more that I really enjoyed the experience of it being A, set in space, and B, also the mixed media and illustrations to go with that. I reread my favourite in a slightly different format, and how is that not a win, you know? For other ones that I read in this vlog, I read Written in the Stars by Alexandria Belfleur. This is a contemporary retelling of Pride and Prejudice. I did enjoy it, but maybe not as a Pride and Prejudice retelling. Like, as a contemporary romance, I thought it was fun, but it's not very Pride and Prejudice-y, the nature of it. But I did like that it was sapphic. I did actually eventually get swayed into believing in the romance because I was very hesitant at the beginning. I am very picky with my opposites attract romances, and it did win me over in the end. While I do have to suspend my disbelief with any enemies to lovers and opposites attract and anything that is two very, very different people coming together, I do think that it pulled it off as best as it could, and I still enjoyed my time with it, and I ended up giving this one a 3-star. The next one that I read is Spellbound at Pemberley by Abigail Reynolds, and this one is a fantasy retelling of Pride and Prejudice in which we are following Lizzie and Darcy, where they have to get married because her magic helps his instead of repels his like it normally should. He needs her help so that he can defeat Napoleon. So it's a historical story, but it also has the magical elements, and it's got very cottagecore vibes with the magic. Even though we're at Pemberley, which is obviously this huge place, the cottagecore vibes were definitely there, and I really did appreciate that. Overall, I thought this was a really good retelling, and I did like the way that the characters were used for this, as well as the way the fantasy elements were woven in, and I will definitely be continuing on with this series. The next one that I read read, however, was The Other Bennett Sister by Janice Hadlow, and I didn't love this. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't. I had many issues with it. It's in the vlog. If you want to know full thoughts, you can go watch the vlog, but for the most part, I just struggled with the believability, with actually caring about the characters, and also the way that this story was paced also made no sense to me. So there were a lot of things going on in there that I wasn't a fan of, and it really made Mary a not like other girls kind of girl in a way that I appreciate that Lizzie kind of has that, but its purpose is to critique the time period, while this one was more to critique the characters that we know and love, and therefore I had kind of issues with it. So not the best. I do still think that you should potentially read reviews and see if it would be for you, but I just really struggled with this one. And the last one that I read for the Jane Austen vlog was that I read Mr. Darcy's Dragons, or Pemberley Mr. Darcy's Dragons by Maria Grace. This one is another retelling of Pride and Prejudice. In this case, we have Darcy, who is a dragon keeper, and so is Lizzie, and one of the dragon eggs that he is supposed to be taking care of gets stolen and leads him to Lizzie. And now he is in Meryton, same as Lizzie, and he needs her help because she's an even better dragon keeper than he is, but she's like, I don't trust this man, like he loses dragon eggs, like what the heck. And it's a conversation from there, and it's how they come to know each other. I really liked the family dynamics in here as well, actually, in the way that that functions. And then I also did just very much enjoy the romancy part of it as well. So I again would be persuaded to continue this. This is a longer series, so I don't know how much my investment is going to be because it did feel quite episodic in nature. So while it was enjoyable, maybe not like quite as compelling as Spellbound at Pemberley, so I am unsure if I will continue, but probably, because I had a good time. And the very last vlog that I did for the month was my trans rights readathon vlog, and for that I read 2 books, 2 novelettes, 4 novellas, listened to 1 podcast, and DNF'd a book. So we'll start out with the full-length novels. The first one that I read being Leech by Huron Ennis. This one is a horror, speculative horror, in which we are following this entity that needs to go live at this Baron's house because the Baron's medic has mysteriously passed away from a disease that shouldn't be permissible, by this parasite that shouldn't be possible, and we are following this character. It's very bizarre, very strange. Again, you've got the kind of parasitic horror going on there. You're unsure about who to trust vibe. It's got locked door vibe to it as well, and you've got opulence versus this dark, creepy, mystery, medicinal side, which I thought fueled really well. There were a couple of reveals in there that I was like, okay, that's why it hasn't got 5 stars, but other than that, like writing style, ambience, everything else, absolutely top tier. The other full-length novel that I read was The Phoenix Extravagant by Yoon-Ha Lee. This one is a sci-fi fantasy. It's steampunk, and in it we are following a man who creates these mechanical animals, but to make them he needs a Phoenix Extravagant, and he has run out, so he needs to set out on a quest to go find it. And I enjoyed this. I love the concept, I love the world building, I love the discussions that are being had. I always do with Yoon-Ha Lee, but very much like I have with everything else I've read by Yoon-Ha Lee, I didn't engage with the characters on an emotional level. And sometimes that's not necessary. Sometimes I'm just like, yeah, okay, I can vibe with this anyway. But with this one, I feel like I was supposed to, but I didn't. So it felt like a phantom limb a little bit. So while I wish I loved this, I had a good time with it, I'm glad I read it, it's still not new favourite material, and it's gotten a 3-star. I did also soft DNF a book, which is The Wings of Ashtaroth by Steve Hugh Westenra. This is one that I am so very much excited to read, but it has very long chapters, and where I was at in the month, I just couldn't actually dedicate the time to just sit and read a long chapter. Like, it just wasn't really a thing I could do. So while I definitely do that, for example, in summer, where I am just about not doing very much for prolonged periods of time, for the week in which I was reading it, it just wasn't compatible, and I felt like I was doing a disservice to the book. Same as like when I put Malazan down the first time, it's just sometimes the circumstances of my reading are going to impact my enjoyment, and that seems unfair on the book. And this is one that I'm really excited to get to because it is a fantasy version of the Punic Wars. So I've just paused that one, and I will hopefully either restart or come back to it depending on how long of a gap I leave, and hopefully we'll give it a better chance potentially in summer. I read, as I said, 4 novellas, which were the Tensorit series by Neon Yang. This one is a series that is a silk punk fantasy. It's sci-fi and fantasy in one, and we are following 2 siblings as they are raised by their mother, who is the head of this very prestigious sect of people, and they are also being indoctrinated into this same system. And we are following these siblings as one remains in the system to try and take it down from within, and one who leaves the system and tries to lead an external rebellion. And we are seeing the relationship between the two, and also the way that this all ends up panning out. I had a great time with this series. The first two were my favorites. The third one dipped a little bit, and then the fourth one definitely brought it back. And I am really glad that I read these, and I really loved how concise they were. They didn't feel like starved books. They felt like deliberate novellas. And I think if you've read novellas, you kind of know what I mean. Some of them just feel like someone tried to shoehorn way too much into a short amount of time, and some feel like this is the perfect length. These were definitely written specifically to be novellas, and the economic writing style allowed for still some really, really extensive world building that I really enjoyed. So I would highly recommend checking these out if you're looking for a novella series. As I said, I read 2 novelettes as well. The first one being Blood is Another Word for Hunger by Rivers Solomon. This one is a historical horror. We are following people from a slave plantation, and I'm not going to talk too much about it because, again, it's only like 40 pages, but it's very dark, very creepy, very gory, and also heavy on the commentary, which is what you'd expect from Rivers Solomon. And I absolutely loved the way that this was written. I did feel like this one could have potentially been longer, and I did feel a bit frustrated that it wasn't longer, hence why it's got 4 stars instead of 5, but I did still have a fantastic time with it, and I will read Rivers Solomon's grocery list at this point. I just loved it. And the other one that I read is The River Judge by S.L. Wong, and this one is companion prequel to The Water Outlaws by this author, which I really enjoyed last year, so I was excited to read this. And we are following one of the characters, and this one is a historical fantasy horror, and we are following one of the characters as they have to learn how to dispose of the bodies that their father keeps piling up in their pantry. It's got cannibalism, it's got kind of a pseudo-y incesty thing going on. It's creepy, it's dark. I don't think it stands on its own. I do think that it benefits from having been part of this existing world, because I don't think it fleshes out the world or anything. But as a novella, I think it did a really good job of just providing atmosphere, vibes, and characters in a way that I found really engaging. And the last thing that I have to talk about is I did listen to the first episode of The Vila. This first episode was written by S.L. Huang as well, and this one is a sci-fi story, and it's episodic in nature, but we are following the same cast throughout. I think maybe when I have read the whole thing, I might talk about it a bit more, because I feel like talking about just one episode of it might then lead you down a path that I don't fully understand myself yet. But it was a fun time. I really did enjoy listening to it. I would have continued if I'd have had the time. It's got some fantastic authors writing in there as well. It's got Becky Chambers. I'm fairly certain Yoon-Ha Lee's written one of the episodes. And yeah, I'm really excited to continue one, but I don't have huge thoughts on it yet because I've just listened to the first episode, which all I can say is that I found really enjoyable. So there you have it. These are some of the books that I managed to read in March. Let me know if you've read any of these and your thoughts on them. Let me know what your best book of March was. I can't tell you probably what my best book of March is, but I will give brief spoilers, and it was The City in the Middle of the Night by Charlie Jane Anders. I absolutely loved that book, and I hope that that vlog will prove to be entertaining enough to warrant me not talking about it more. And that is all from me for today, so thank you ever so much for watching, and I will hopefully catch you in another one soon. Bye!